Hello, and welcome to everybody watching. My name is Dr. Drew Leader, a professional philosopher and MD with a special interest in how people heal from different injuries and illnesses and disabilities. And in fact, this is the topic of a new book of mine, which is called The Healing Body, Creative Responses to Illness, Aging, and Affliction. But the premise, at least of the first half of the book, is that there's a kind of chessboard of healing strategies that are available to people when they experience bodily breakdown, 20 in all. And I'm going to talk about them one by one. Today, we're going to be treating one that is called ignoring. Let me say first a little bit about illness, which I talked about in a previous video. Thought of not as medical disease conceived of with a diagnosis, a treatment plan, etc., but more as an experience of life. When we fall sick or when we experience a serious injury, we experience a whole series of disintegrations across our world. Our body is something foreign to us. We're constricted in terms of our ability to flow freely through space and time and be with others in social and work settings. It may even call into question the meaning of our life or of the universe. Why has this happened to me? Where do I go from here in the face of this bodily assault? However, people have enormous healing capacities, which they often arrive at independent of the medical system. And again, let's talk about ignoring. That sounds like a pretty low level response to a physical problem. I'll just ignore it. It's the same root of the word ignorance. Doesn't sound like a good thing. But let's imagine somebody, we'll call her Janet, who has rheumatoid arthritis or some other serious motor limitation. And she chooses to go out gardening in the morning. She just chooses to ignore her, her quarrelsome body. And she thereby gets herself out in nature. She keeps herself active. It's good for her spirit. It's true that she takes a certain risk by ignoring the signals that she's receiving from her body. And every healing strategy has what I call a shadow side. If it's excessively utilized or inappropriately utilized, it can lead to negative results. We have to be careful for that. But why is ignoring positive? Well, I've mentioned some of those reasons. It allows her to continue with the flow and the joy of her everyday life. But also, it has to do with the dynamics of attention. If you're sitting in a cafe, maybe you've had this experience, and you start to listen in on a conversation that's happening at an adjoining table, it kind of becomes louder. In fact, you hear it more distinctly compared to all the background noise of the cafe. If it's an irritating conversation, maybe somebody's talking on and on their cell phone, then once again, that irritation takes over your consciousness. You can't focus on anything other than that. And similarly, when we're in pain or when we have an injury, it can take over our field of attention so that we just can't concentrate on anything else. And in fact, the perceived pain seems to get worse and worse, just like that cafe conversation seems to get louder and louder. Whereas if we ignore it, the signal actually diminishes. This has been found by people who have investigated pain, That pain is not simply a peripheral stimulus, but it's processed by our prefrontal cortex and our frontal cortex in ways that can either tune it up or diminish the signal. And when we really focus a lot on pain, that creates a kind of louder and often reverberating circuit that traps us into a cycle of chronic pain, even when the peripheral stimulus has faded away. Conversely, if we can defocus on that pain and turn our attention elsewhere, it reduces the signal, it diminishes the pain. And I'm sure you've had that experience where you've been so absorbed in some other activity, you kind of forget you're in pain. In fact, the pain has kind of gone away. So this is an example of how ignoring pain or ignoring a physical limitation like arthritis can actually allow us to live more fully, and more happily, even in the face of this assault. So that's the first of our 20 strategies. We'll go on to survey the chessboard of other options and try to help you to figure out the maximal and best chess strategy in dealing with whatever problem you may be struggling with now or possibly in the future. So thanks very much. Once again, I go into this in much greater depth in this new book, The Healing Body, which is now available if you're at all interested in getting a hold of it. Thanks for your attention.